It's time for another edition of MLB This Week. It's the MLB This Week Podcast. My name is Rich Baxter.
And I'm Gary Mack.
And hello, Mr. Gary Mack. And we're almost at the end of March here. Only about about a week or so away from opening day.
Ah, yes, we're closing in fast, Rich, and can't wait for it to occur. We still have March Madness going on, and hockey's tailing off, but, you know, we're all about baseball, and baseball's almost here.
Yes, it is. And, of course, as we've been talking about every weekend now that we've been doing the show in the past month or so, still chilly, holding on to the Northeast here where we do our show from, and seems like winter's never going to end around here, Gar.
I know, winter's holding on. Last night we had snow showers, Rich. I don't know if you had it down there where you are, but out here in Long Island we had snow and some accumulation out on the east end of Long Island. Nothing here, but boy, I looked out the window one time and it was coming down like a bat out of hell, and I thought, oh boy. But luckily nothing stuck, and it was a nice sunny day today, so everything is good.
Yes, every day is good, especially when you're watching baseball. Of course, Sunday, a great time to watch baseball and to listen to MLB This Week, the podcast. And, Gary, we have a special guest on with us tonight, Mr. Ed Kasputis, a fellow podcaster, and he has a great website there at baseballphd.com.
Yeah, and Ed, welcome to the show.
No, thank you very much. It's an honor.
Eddie, welcome aboard to MLB This Week, and tell our listeners a little bit about what you do there at baseballphd.com.
Well, it's baseballphd.net, and every week we produce a podcast. We've been doing it since 2010. In fact, tonight we're going to release episode 297, San Francisco Giants. What we do, our tagline is, what would you do if you get a PhD in life through baseball? So each week we are focusing on a different MLB team. We traditionally always do the world champions for our first episode of the season, and the loser of the World Series for our second podcast. And if you were to listen to our show, we're talking about baseball, but we're talking about other stuff. If you're at AT&T Park, what are you going to see? Are you going to go to McCovey's Cove? Are you going to ride BART and see the other great things in San Francisco? So what we're trying to do is promote baseball tourism and say, listen, we want you to go to all 30 major league ballparks, but connect the dots and you'll start to understand why America is such a great country.
Yes, it is, and I love the America First theme that you promote quite often with your shows and podcasts, and you have a couple great co-hosts on your show. Why don't you tell us a little bit about them as well?
Well, Mark Rantala has been a friend of mine for like 38 years. One time when he was a grown man and I was in college, he assigned me the task of getting tickets to the 1981 All-Star Game in Cleveland. I had no contacts. Well, I got lucky. We sat behind home plate. So he's been a good friend. Farley Dillinger, I've known Farley for probably 20 years. Farley is a pharmaceutical rep. He loves baseball. He loves politics. At one time, he was a campaign worker for me when I served in the Ohio House, and we just talk and experience things together. A year ago today, we're in Montreal watching a sold-out Olympic Stadium as Canadians are screaming, "We want another franchise." And that's a perfect example. When I went there, I thought there was no chance Montreal will ever get another franchise. I went to 2 preseason games, 96,000 people. They want it. I just hope they don't try to build a Target field. They need a Miller Park. They need a roof because, as we experience in the Northeast, it's cold in April.
And do you think that Montreal will ever see another franchise, or is that just pie in the sky?
I don't think it's pie in the sky. What I learned when I went to Montreal last year is that their fantasy is the Tampa Bay Rays. They'll be in the American League East. They'll have a rival with the Blue Jays and the Yankees. That's their fantasy. But they've got to raise a whole lot of money. And, you know, me being also a former, or I guess a current Cleveland Browns fan, I'm not a fan of stealing franchises. But that's kind of what the whispering is. And with their economic model, they're talking of an open-air stadium because, a retractable roof would probably cost another $200 million. But I just don't see how. When I went there, it was snowy, and it's like, no, you guys need protection.
Well, they had the dome up there, of course, and a lot of people feel that's one of the reasons that they couldn't draw, because they wanted to go outside in the beautiful weather of the summer. But like you said, the first couple of months, it's awful cold up there.
Yeah, no, maybe the compromise they could do, I guess they're between a rock and a hard place. To demolish Olympic Stadium, they're saying, is $800 million. So they could do a model kind of like what the Cleveland Indians did in the 30s. They had League Park, and then they built 80,000-seat Cleveland Municipal Stadium. And for weekend games, they played at Cleveland Municipal Stadium. Maybe what they do is they use Olympic Park or Olympic Stadium for April and October, and they build their Target Field. But Target Field in April in Montreal, I think, would be miserable.
Yeah, I think you're very right about that. And Gary, you have a small audio clip of a portion of a program that Baseball PhD, the podcast, recorded. Why don't you roll that for a second?
Well, unfortunately, Rich, I've seemed to misplace it. So
that's the story of our life, but that's okay. That's all right.
But well, we did have a Mo Berg portion of the podcast that you did. That was a really great show, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about production with your show, the production that you guys do, because it sounds so good as a finished product. Do you spend much time on it, or do you farm that out, or who's your production guy?
Me, the lawyer that has too many clients and is scratching his head. What I do, I have a recording studio in my law office, and I use GarageBand. And I have 3 Electro Voice, very, very nice microphones. And we record stuff raw, and then I create the illusion that we're way more sophisticated in post-production. I mean, I've done stuff where I'm interviewing a guy from New York City on the phone, and then I go get background noise of New York City, and I lay it in. And it's like, whoa! And it's just funny. I mean, I hate to say, a year and a half ago, unfortunately, I got divorced. My wife's divorce attorneys were making the allegation that I took 30 baseball trips a year. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Well, they were listening to the podcast, and let's say we're talking about the Dodgers. We're standing in Cleveland, Ohio, going, think blue. Look at beautiful Dodger Stadium. And you've got evil divorce attorneys writing down on the legal pad, he's in L.A. this week. And so the biggest thing that I learned in GarageBand is after we're all done, I have to edit out the tracks. Let's say I'm talking for 10 seconds and the other 2 guys aren't. I have to delete their silence because there's a little bit of an echo of my microphone spilling over to theirs. So I'm basically just cutting away blocks of audio that no one said anything, adding sounds and all that. It does take a bunch of time, and more importantly, as you know, just thinking, 3 weeks ahead, who's going to be my guest, why, and then sometimes things will change. We'll tape a show, let's say on a Saturday, and 2 days later something crazy happens, like a trade in that, and I'll sometimes go in and add my voice and create the illusion that we knew what happened even when we didn't know it.
Yeah. Well, I think we've done that in the past as well.
Right. My fellow guys will call me and like, hey, I had no idea about that trade, but it acted like I did. So, so it's a lot of fun. It's a good hobby. It's a constructive thing. And, you talked about Mo Berg. Mo Berg is the only reason we started Baseball PhD. For your listeners, there's a great book out there, The Catcher Who Was a Spy. And it was the story of Mo Berg. And by listening to that, it's like, you know what? Mo Berg got a PhD in life through baseball. He traveled the world and all that for baseball. That's what I want Baseball PhD to be. It's kind of like talking about This Week in Baseball meets Rush Limbaugh. And everything is interconnected. So, we'll talk about worldly events and work it into the fact of, the Japanese League just started. The Harry S. Truman Museum is beautiful, and I'm going to be in Kansas City next week to see the Royals, and that's only 5 minutes away from Harry S. Truman Sports Complex. Everyone should go when they're in Kansas City.
That's awesome. And is that where you always spend your opening days, or do you have a different stadium you travel to sometimes for opening day or opening week?
I'm becoming, as I get older, a ticket snob. Last year might have been my last opening day. My buddy Farley got me tickets. I'm sitting next to Farley. I'm at Progressive Field in Cleveland. It's raining. It's miserable. The foul pole prevented me, the right field foul pole, prevented me from seeing the batter in home plate. And I looked at Farley and I said, is this candid camera? You go out of your way to find this ticket? And I've become a ticket snob. What I try to do, guys, is once a year I go to one World Series game, wherever it is, because as a Clevelander, I'm not going to imitate Rip Van Winkle and wait every 40 years and be 92 years old when the Tribe is back in the World Series. So I guess I've become a ticket snob, and sometimes I want to save my money for my World Series or, College World Series. Go see postseason baseball in June. So this year I'm intentionally not going to opening day, but I am going to go see the Tribe on April 15th to honor the IRS and see a day game and think about why I love baseball but hate the tax man.
That's awesome.
And how many stadiums do you get to in the course of a year?
Well, I've been to all 30, and to be honest with you, when you go back to, Miller Park for the 5th time, you don't get goosebumps like you did the first or second time. This year I'm going to London. I'm going to see an NFL game. I've got a listener from Melbourne, Australia, Justin Woods. He's flying into Cleveland July 22nd through the 27th. I'm going to take him to Comerica in Detroit. I'll take him to PNC Park. We'll go to Progressive. And one of our guys that does our podcast, his name is Dave Matejcek. He's a great lawyer. He has a fantastic wiffle ball ballpark in his backyard with lights, a well-groomed infield, and all that. So we'll take Mr. Woods from Australia to the wiffle ball park in Seville, Ohio, and teach him that grown men can still dream as we hit a wiffle ball and put it over the left field fence.
That's awesome story there. I haven't played wiffle ball in years.
Well, it's not as painful when you get hit with the wiffle ball. But no, I haven't played as much in years either. But, we got a great game. And I guess the reason probably all three of us love it is that it recaptures our youth. We think of the memories. For me, it's like there's Joe Morgan, there's Johnny Bench, there's Gaylord Perry. They can't find anything on him. He must not have any grease on him, and he's not doctoring the ball. So it's the stories that motivate me now. Is that how you guys think?
Yeah, pretty much. As the older I get, it's pretty much goes that way. I'm reading a really good book now on Ty Cobb, which kind of dispels all of the old stories about Ty Cobb that him being a racist and everything. And
right.
It's coming out, I think, in May officially. So very interesting. But I was just wondering, of all the stadiums that you've been to, how would you rank some of the new stadiums? What's the favorite one that you've gone to?
The official answer is that for a day game, it's AT&T Park because of the water feature and all that. For a night game, it's PNC Park. PNC Park in Pittsburgh is 98% as good as AT&T, but for AT&T, when the sun sets and the fog comes in, a beautiful summer day becomes 55 degrees and you're freezing. Whereas for PNC Park, you've got the beautiful Pittsburgh skyline, and you still have the water feature of the Allegheny. So to get to the highest level of ballpark, you need a water feature.
And what's the worst one you've been to?
Oakland Coliseum. If you take BART in from San Francisco, there's a few stops where you're like, what the heck happened? We got to call troops in. This is ridiculous. The Trop in Tampa Bay is probably the second worst, but here's the disclaimer. I have seen games on TV, and it looks like they're playing in a nightclub in the Trop. It's like the lighting's not that good.
Right.
When you get there in real life, my initial thought was, this isn't that bad. This is okay. I could tolerate it. The two Florida teams, their problem is that there's too many transient people in Florida. So often when you go to their games, it's the retirees from the visiting city cheering on the Phillies or cheering on the Yankees. And you go, is this a home game? And it's like, well, kind of.
Have you ever been up to Toronto Stadium, Ed?
I've been to all 30. Yeah, in fact, if you go to Sky Dome, for your listeners, the Toronto Renaissance Hotel has bi-level suites that you can rent. I mean, it's like $600-700 seats. 6-7 people could stay there, and you're literally in center field. You open up your patio door, and you can trash talk the center fielder.
Yeah,
so I took my children there, and all 7 of my children and my wife when she was my wife. And about the 3rd inning, you're sitting there, and it's like, where's Mom? And you go upstairs to the master bedroom. Mom's taking a nap, and it's the 3rd inning, and it's like, ah. So you go back down and you watch the game with your 7 kids, and sometimes you take people to paradise, and they still don't know it's paradise. But the Sky Dome has very historical significance. It was the first retractable dome built in North America.
It was an awesome place to see a game. What struck me the most about that stadium when I was walking around with my wife was how clean the floors were there compared to American stadiums where people just throw their trash, popcorn bags, hot dog wrappers, things like that. It was almost like you could eat off the floor right behind the stands. That's the impression I took away from it.
Well, I'll take you one step further. 2012, I went to opening day in Tokyo at the Tokyo Dome. That place is even cleaner. That place, the ushers are walking up and down with big garbage bags, and everybody is, throwing it in and keeping the place spotless and all that. And I saw a phenomenon at the Tokyo Dome that I don't know why we don't do it in America. On the concourse, they've got like greenhouses with a ventilation system. All the smokers go there and smoke like crazy, and it doesn't affect anybody. And it's like, we have the technology, and if you're a Clevelander, Progressive Field, or formerly known as Jacobs Field, got built with the syntax. We charge extra taxes on cigarettes, and we treat cigarette smokers at that stadium like they're felons. And it's like, we need to bow to them and thank them. We need to have some ventilation systems just like they have at the Tokyo Dome so that a smoker, okay, if they want to smoke, it's America, but they're not harming anybody.
Yeah, over in Philadelphia, they have the areas set up outside of the stadium, and it's almost like little encampments of smokers. They have just certain areas where you can only smoke at.
Right, they're paying homage to North Korea.
Now we're big on ballpark food on this show. So, what stadiums do you think have the best ballpark food?
Ballpark food was AT&T. They've got a wide assortment of stuff. Let me give you a disclaimer. In the past year, I've lost 50 pounds.
Wow.
I have a food scale now on my kitchen counter. I read nutritional labels. Baseball fans, nothing good is at a ballpark if you're a nutritionalist. But then you've got stuff where the all-you-can-eat stuff, the tickets. I would encourage our fans, don't do that. It's like we're eating all the leftovers. The nacho chips are stale, the buns are stale. We're not the garbage disposals for Major League Baseball. So now that I read nutritional labels, I do go to a ballpark with great fear and trepidation. I mean, a hot dog on a bun is 250 calories. For the first time ever, I'm buying water at a ballpark. That's sacrilege. but when you look at stuff, I once went to the movies and they had the nutritional stuff on the board: a large popcorn and a large soda, 2,200 calories. It's like, no, wait, that's my daily caloric intake. It's like, no, this will be your snack. And it's like, I'm eating for 2 days or 3 days. So Fenway has, clam chowder. You got to try the clam chowder at Fenway. You got to do a Dodger dog, anything that's grilled. But for many of the ballparks, they don't excite me. It's just, do you want your generic fries or do you want that? I mean, Philadelphia, as I remember, they were respectable, but Rich, if I'm in Philadelphia with you, what's the most favorite food you would buy there?
Cheesesteak.
The famous cheesesteak, of course, or the Schmitter, as they're calling a sandwich now over there at the stadium, in homage of Mike Schmidt.
Okay. Do they name anything after Steve Carlton? For a long, long time, he was the only good pitcher you had.
Yeah, nothing as far as foodstuffs for Carlton, but Schmitty has a sandwich named after him. You can get great cheesesteaks there, and I recommend it. If you go to a ballpark like in Philadelphia, do get yourself a cheesesteak, because that's what you're going to long for long after you're gone out of there.
Does Greg Luzinski still have like a barbecue place at your ballpark?
Yes, he does. He still operates the barbecue. It's called Bull's Barbecue, and
right.
Yeah, they sort of borrowed that concept off of Baltimore. Baltimore had that nice barbecue out there in right field, I think it is.
For Boog
Pound, yeah.
Yeah.
And then Pittsburgh's not anything, and so yeah, it's a shtick that they do. But if Greg Luzinski's ever, cooking something, let me know. I'll fly in and shake his hand and buy like a pulled pork sandwich.
Absolutely. Well, we want to thank Ed Kasputis for joining us on the show. Check him out at Baseball Podcast or BaseballTalkRadio.com, BaseballPodcast.net, or his own website, BaseballPhD.net. And Ed, we hope to have you on a future show. We'd love to having you on tonight's show.
Thank you. Have an awesome end of spring training, and let's play ball.
All right. Good night, Ed.
Good night.
So that was Ed Kasputis. He lives in Cleveland, has a great show, Baseball PhD, and they do a really wonderful job on that, Gary.
Yeah, they certainly do, Rich, and he's great interview too. It was nice chatting with him and finding out. And he's also on Baseball Podcast at BaseballTalkRadio.com as well. So you can find him there with many other great baseball shows like Rich's show and my show, Mets Musings and Phillies Talk, and many others are right there on BaseballTalkRadio.com and BaseballPodcast.net. And that's the home of great baseball talk shows.
Yes, indeed. You can follow Baseball Podcast on Twitter as well, and you can follow our own show, Gary and Mine Show, where we talk all about the world of baseball each week here at MLB This Week on Twitter. Find out when our shows are. And perhaps one of the best ways of finding out our show times is to subscribe to our Google Plus feed. You'll get an email the instant we queue up a show, and you can join us live, and even you can even applaud us. We have a applause button now on one of the live feeds that we do, so we're on video and audio for your listening and viewing pleasure.
We're all over the place, Rich. Can't make up our minds.
Yeah, we're just everywhere. But you have one of the greatest stories of the week here, and it involves a throwback game.
Well, yeah, this past Tuesday, Rich, the Indiana Hoosiers and the Louisville Cardinals played a baseball game, and they wore throwback uniforms. And as you can see here, if you're watching the video, the Hoosiers wore a classic cream uniform with stirrup socks, and they're pretty sharp looking. And the Cardinals, they wore a bluish gray shade that hasn't been seen in decades, And I really like the Cardinals uniform with that bluish gray shade. I think maybe some teams should go back to that. It's kind of different and really sharp looking. And by the way, Indiana defeated Louisville in that game 3-0. So little college baseball there, going back in time with some of them old-fashioned uniforms, and they're really pretty cool looking.
Yeah, I love the combination, like you said, with the almost like a turquoise blue there. But yeah, awesome combination of uniforms there, and that's one of my favorite games to go to, these throwback games, Gar.
Yeah, people don't realize that some of the old uniforms are really pretty cool, and sometimes when they put the new twist to it, it doesn't do the same thing, but it would really be great if they went like these guys did. They went with the old style hats and everything. So sometimes the teams get the old emblems on the hats, but they have them in the new style. I don't know what they call it, a 6-panel or something, where they used to have the low crown and the flop. It was more floppy years ago, and that's the way to really do it. Go the whole 9 yards. Not only the uniform, go with the hats, the whole thing. Make them cover up their logos on their spikes. Make them wear black spikes. That would be really the coolest thing to do. So maybe somebody will do it this year.
That's for sure. And I'm looking at an older uniform right now as we're doing the show. It's actually Cy Young's birthday today on March 29th. He would have been 148 years old today. Says he was born
a double-headed today.
Yeah, so Cy Young, wow, didn't know he went that far back into history, but yeah, one of the original inductees into the Hall of Fame, celebrating a birthday today. And Gary, for the second consecutive year, this player in MLB baseball was voted the most overrated player by his peers, and that's not a good vote to win, but that's what Bryce Harper of the Washington Nationals was voted. He was polled out of 117 major leaguers. He garnered 30% of the vote to again be voted, quote-unquote, most overrated player in baseball.
Wow, I think part of the problem with Harper was that he came up too young, and he's a little bit on the spoiled side, or maybe this is what we've done to him. The sporting world, the fandom have done to this kid, and he really hasn't lived up to expectations like a la Mike Trout, who's just set the world on fire. And Harper really hasn't had a monster season like that, or even close to it. He's been slowed by some injuries, but as you say, Rich, this is not a good thing that you want from your peers to be rated, to be voted on as the most overrated player in baseball.
Yeah, finishing a close second for the second consecutive year as well was Yasiel Puig of the Dodgers, and of course he's sort of a showboater. He's almost about the same mold as Bryce Harper, but both of these players have their moments, especially Puig. But these guys have not earned the respect of their fellow players. Coming in third place was Alex Rodriguez.
No surprise there.
Yeah, a lot of players not very keen on him. But the players voted on the best overall player in the Major League Baseball, and as you said, Gary, you mentioned his name, Mike Trout was voted as best overall player in the game. He garnered 61% of the vote, and that's a nice title to win.
And it's very interesting because him and Harper are about the same age. Don't know, maybe Trout's a little older, but they're roughly close in age. And the impact that Trout's made and the impact that Harper has made, it's just totally two different things. I mean, Trout's the All-American boy. He's got the short haircut, the whole clean-cut look. Harper had the weird haircuts and hairstyles, and just annoyed some people with his attitude and stuff. And I still think there's friction there with him and Matt Williams. But interesting that Trout's and of course Trout has had some big seasons already too, which Harper is yet really to have a monster season. And interesting though how the two of them, the dichotomy there, and how their peers feel about them.
Yeah, and I rode by Mike Trout's high school this weekend, as I sometimes do, and I looked over at that high school, and believe it or not, his high school is not one of those modern type schools with the pools in it and all that stuff. There's still air conditioners hanging out of the windows of that school. It's very old in Millville, New Jersey, but that's sometimes how some of the best players come up. They're not born with a silver spoon in their mouth, and they just hustle, and he happened to be one of those 1 in a 20 million players to come up out of southern New Jersey here, and just happened to be the best player in baseball. It's an amazing story.
And Rich, the talent has got to be there, because with the weather, we spoke about the weather, but the weather is not conducive to playing all the time, and they do have a shorter season. So the talent there is just got to be amazing. And of course, we've seen them play and know that it is. But it's and the Northeast has put out a lot of major leaguers. People don't realize it, but Ron Darling, John Franco, coming out of New York, and so many players, even in Alex Rodriguez and Derek Jeter from Massachusetts, and just a lot of players come out of the Northeast, and it's. I guess the talent's there, and they just know how to hone it right, and with the shortened seasons and stuff. But I guess nowadays they travel all over anyway. So
exactly, they're not like they're playing down in the Dominican year-round. They have a very short season, as you said, probably from around now to mid-June, maybe even early June. That's how short the season is. Of course, they have to stay in shape all year round. It's not very difficult for a younger player to do, but yeah, it is amazing. And Gary, you have a next story here about a bold promotion that probably will never take place.
Well, the Fresno Grizzlies announced they're having a Back to the Future night, and what they did was they dreamed up this promotion. And they unveiled the rings being a 2017 Houston Astros replica World Series championship ring. And they had this idea out there that's what they were going to do, give away these championship ring for the Houston Astros. And about a day later, they decided that it wasn't a good idea, and they didn't want to jinx the Astros, so they pulled back on giving out the rings. Now, why would you give out championship rings for the Houston Astros, who is a young team, but not a very good team at this point? They are getting better, but it's because the rebuilding Astros were pegged as the 2017 World Series champions by Sports Illustrated in last June's 2014 issue. So they kind of took that, the Fresno Grizzlies did, and ran with it. And of course the Astros, I don't think, were too keen on it, because you don't want to put any undue pressure on a young team. And so the Grizzlies went and they canceled this promotion. Nonetheless, the Grizzlies will keep going with their Back to the Future night with themed jerseys that look like a DeLorean and feature a flux capacitor on the back. And as we always say, only in the minor leagues, Rich.
Yeah, now I did read about this promotion during the week. I didn't hear that they had scrapped it, though, but I kind of thought to myself, hey, as a younger fan, they've never seen a championship ring. So this would be a cool promotion to have for a younger person, that happens to go to a minor league game, because as they're trying to promote, it all starts there in Fresno. So I didn't really see a problem with it. I kind of thought it was pretty cool promotion.
Well, I think it's more the jinx factor and putting extra pressure on the Astros on the major league level that they don't want to do. And baseball's a very superstitious game, so you don't want to do something, and if it backfires, you just don't want to be the one to be blamed for it. So I guess they canceled the discretion is the better part of valor, and just canceled the rings. They're still having the night, but they're canceling those giveaways.
So we've been talking about some great minor league promotions in the past couple of weeks. We'll be bringing you more of them for sure. And Gary, in another story this whole past week, Pete Rose, the story just keeps growing. It keeps getting bigger. There was a editorial in Cincinnati newspaper yesterday, and it says Cincinnati.com, just reinstate Pete Rose. They're really pulling for him. They want him back in baseball. A lot of players have been taking sides. Mike Schmidt, as we told you last week, has always been a big supporter of Pete Rose. He's also had his detractors. Certain players believe that he did get caught red-handed and he should not be let back into the game. But yeah, Pete Rose, the legend, he's 73 years of age. Now, a lot of people think it's high time that he gets back into baseball. Even the commissioner, Rob Manfred, has said in the past week that even though Pete Rose may be let back into baseball, readmitted into the game, so to speak, doesn't make him a shoo-in for Cooperstown, because Cooperstown would actually have to approve him as well back into baseball. So this is kind of some positive news for Pete Rose. You're finally hearing some positive talk about him possibly getting readmitted back into the game.
And they have to decide how they're going to vote on him at this point. Is it going to be the Veterans Committee? Is it going to be something that, the regular writers? Because he never really went on the ballot. So does he get the 5 years on the ballot? Like everybody else does. It's just an interesting situation, and he's probably, if it goes to the players, he might have a better chance of getting in than going through the writers. But I'm sure if they let him in, and I think it's going to happen, I think they're going to put a lot of restrictions. He will not be able to hold a job in a uniform job. I don't think he won't be able to be a coach. He won't be able to manage on any level. I think they're going to put a lot of restrictions on him. He's making a living, so he can't fight and say they're not allowing me to make a living in any way. Though I would like to see perhaps him get a scouting job or something along that line. I don't see where a problem would be with that. But they're going to do what they can to keep him out of the everyday game. So he'll be allowed, to attend games naturally and to show up. I don't know if they still do an old timers game or whatever. All-star games, he'll be able to be, he won't be persona non grata anymore in baseball, but I don't think they're going to allow him to get any full-time employment.
Yeah, and that's sort of what some of the articles are going to now. Should Rob Manfred admit Pete Rose back into baseball, what will be the limits, if any, on Pete Rose? What will his role be? And they could come to an agreement where he's not employed by a Major League Baseball team, and I think he would go for that. I mean, I think he just wants to be recognized for the player he was. And if they could structure a deal like that, I think you might see him back into baseball. A lot of talk around Cincinnati as well has been whether or not this issue will overshadow the All-Star game that's scheduled to be held there this year. Maybe this can get done before the game. That would be great for baseball. They have a few more months to go, and certainly this could be done before then. Make it a mute issue. Pete's back. He appears at the All-Star game, which he's scheduled to do, a few events there, and just limit his abilities to join a club as you said, a uniformed employee of the club.
Yeah, I think that they're definitely going to put restrictions on him, and I think that's something that they're going to do. But we'll see what happens. Manfred hasn't made any rulings yet on it, so it'll be interesting to see what he decides.
Yes, indeed. Well, we're going to go right back to you for our next show, or our next story on the show, rather. But I think I'll take this one and we'll go out with our favorite topic, which is ballpark food. Before we do that, we'll talk about this story. Mo'ne Davis, of course, was in the news last week with our last show. We had mentioned that she had been talked about by a Bloomsburg College player, and that player was suspended, thrown off the team there in Bloomsburg after making a derogatory tweet in which he mentioned the young player who was on the Little League World Series. The story took another turn this past week. Mo'ne Davis actually went on the defensive of the college player and asked the team to forgive him this one time and give him a second chance.
Yes, they did, and a nice gesture by Mo'ne. And, of course, the team said that they would not reconsider, and they won't give him that second chance. And it's really kind of a shame because she was the injured party in all this, and she didn't want to see him get hurt. And, people have applauded that decision. I don't know. I mean, he apologized. Look, he's young, he's stupid, he made a dumb mistake, and like I said, the injured party is okay with it, so maybe they should reconsider, but at least it was a nice move by Mo'ne Davis.
Yeah, very grown up, above the years that she is. That almost made you break down the tears when you'd hear such a young player say things like that. And, of course, that college player is a fellow baseball player, so she probably knows the agony he's going through sitting on sidelines, not able to play with the team anymore, and possibly ending his career in baseball. So we'll have to keep our eye on that story for you, our listeners here on MLB This Week, the podcast. And, Gary, you have a great final story of the show here, more about stuff that's after our heart, baseball ballpark food.
Well, Rich, it seems like every week there's some story coming out about ballpark food, and this week is no exception at all. How many times, Rich, have you gone to a ball game and you got the nachos, and they're kind of hard to eat there because you got people coming in and out of the aisle, and you're trying to balance it, and you got a ball game going, and maybe a beer and everything, and you got them on your knees. You got them. It's just not easy. Well, the Milwaukee Brewers have thought of a solution. The Brewers Inside the Park nachos allow you to enjoy taco meat with a crusting of Doritos, all on a stick for portability. It will be topped with cheese sauce and sour cream and served with a side of salsa. So, again, if you got the video, it's on the left there, a picture of it. Milwaukee Brewers going with the Inside the Park nacho on a stick. And the Houston Astros are not going to be outdone by anybody. Down south, a big favorite is chicken and waffles. And this year, the Astros are adding to their food menu with the chicken and the waffle cone. And the concoction is a waffle cone stuffed with fried chicken and topped off with mashed potatoes and a healthy drizzle of honey mustard. And that's on the right as you're looking at this on the video. So more ballpark food for a different taste. Nachos on a stick and fried chicken in a cone with mashed potatoes.
I think Ed Kasputis said it good. If you're not going to get a healthy food at a ballpark. And those are two prime examples. I think I would be wearing that food on the right-hand side.
But it does look pretty good. I gotta admit, that one week that we were looking at one thing, I think it was the donut and the hot dog, and that didn't send us. This is a little more edible looking.
A little more apropos to the ballpark, that's for sure. Well, we appreciate you tuning in to this edition of MLB This Week. It's the MLB This Week show with Rich and Gary. We'll be back with much more. We're taking next week off. We'll be off for Easter, but we'll be joining you real soon for our next show. So everyone enjoy the coming week. We'll be back before opening day with our picks for our teams that we think will do real well in the world of baseball. Gary, you have a great Easter and enjoy the week.
And you do the same, Rich, and good night, everybody.